Imagine the most powerful ship in the world, a floating fortress considered indestructible. Now imagine this giant being hunted by an entire nation. In May 1941, the German battleship Bismarck sank the pride of the British Navy, and at that moment sealed its own fate. What followed was a relentless pursuit across the Atlantic, a race against time, fuel, and death. This is the story of the hunt for the Bismarck. At the height of World War II, the Atlantic Ocean had become the most strategic battlefield on the planet. There were no trenches, no visible borders, only vulnerable convoys and lurking predators. At the center of this silent war, a weapon destined to change the naval balance emerged: the battleship Bismarck. Built by the Kriegsmarine, the Bismarck was more than a ship. It was a declaration of power, weighing over 45,000 tons, with massive armor and 8 cannons capable of destroying targets at over 30 kilometers. It represented the pinnacle of German naval engineering. For Adolf Hitler, the Bismarck was not just a weapon, it was propaganda. But there was a problem. The Royal Navy still dominated the seas, and any attempt to break that dominance would be met with full force. At the end of May 1941, Germany launched a daring mission. Operation Rheinübung had a simple and dangerous objective: to break the British blockade and destroy convoys in the Atlantic. The Bismarck was not alone. Alongside it was the heavy cruiser Prinz Eugen. Commanding the mission was Admiral Günther Lutyens, cold, disciplined, and extremely cautious. But the British already suspected, and they were waiting. On the morning of May 24th, the inevitable happened. The Bismarck encountered Royal Navy forces, including the legendary HMS Hood. The Hood was not just a ship, it was a national symbol. When the combat began, the world held its breath. Artillery salvos crossed the horizon. Columns of water exploded around the ships, until, in a matter of seconds, a single shot changed everything. The Hood exploded, broken in two. It disappeared beneath the waters in minutes. More than 1,400 men died. The pride of Great Britain had been destroyed. The news swept through the United Kingdom like an electric shock. The response was immediate. The order was clear: destroy the Bismarck at any cost. Under the command of Admiral John Tovey, the Home Fleet launched one of the greatest naval manhunts in history. Battleships, cruisers, aircraft carriers, all converging on a single target: the Bismarck. Despite the victory, the Bismarck did not emerge unscathed. Hull damage began to take its toll. Fuel leaking, reduced speed, compromised range. Lutyens needed to decide: to turn back or to advance. He chose to head towards occupied France, a decision that would change everything. In the midst of the pursuit, the Bismarck managed to disappear. The British lost contact. It seemed the end of the hunt. But then, a mistake. Lutyens broke the radio silence. That single transmission was enough. At Bletchley Park, analysts intercepted the signal. The approximate position was revealed. The hunt resumed, and this time with a British advantage. The last British hope came from the air. From the aircraft carrier HMS Royal. Its swordfish torpedo bombers, slow, fragile, almost obsolete, but lethal. Under intense fire, they attacked. And then, a torpedo struck the stern of the Bismarck, locking its rudders. The German giant could no longer maneuver. It was doomed. On the morning of May 27th, British ships appeared on the horizon. Among them, HMS Rodney and HMS King George V. The attack began, and it didn't stop. For more than an hour, The Bismarck was mercilessly bombarded, cannons destroyed, deck in flames, crew decimated. Even so, it wouldn't sink, until finally, at 10:39 a.m., the Colossus disappeared beneath the Atlantic. More than 2,000 men died. Just over 100 survived. The loss of the Bismarck changed everything. Germany abandoned large surface ships and turned to submarines. But the story of that giant didn't disappear with it, because the Bismarck wasn't just a ship, it was a symbol of power, of pride, and of how even the greatest giants can fall. The North Atlantic was dark, cold, hostile, silent. Aboard the Bismarck, the reality was already clear to many. They would not escape. After the impact that locked the rudders, the ship was condemned to describe slow circles in the ocean, like a wounded animal awaiting the final blow. Inside the hull, engineering teams struggled desperately. Attempts to unlock the rudders, use of engines to compensate for the rotation, improvised plans. Nothing worked. Admiral Gunther Lutyens walked across the deck with an almost disturbing calm. No screams, no panic, only acceptance. That night, he sent his last message to the German command. It was no longer a report. It was a farewell. While the Bismarck awaited the inevitable, the British gave no rest. Royal Navy destroyers surrounded the ship overnight. They weren't seeking to destroy the battleship. Not yet. The objective was different: to maintain constant pressure, to deprive the crew of sleep, to force errors, to break morale. Torpedo attacks were launched in the darkness. Explosions echoed around the ship. Emergency lights flashed, and each impact, even without direct damage, increased the tension on board. It was psychological warfare, and it was working. The dawn of May 27th brought with it a grey landscape, the rough sea, the heavy sky, and on the horizon, silhouettes. Warships, the giants of the home fleet, had finally arrived. Among them, HMS Rodney and HMS King George V. On the Bismarck, there was no more doubt. It was the end. But there would be no surrender. At 8:47 a.m., the first shots cut through the air. The Rodney's cannons roared. Seconds later, the Bismarck responded. Even without complete control, even turning slowly, it still fought. Tons of projectiles crisscrossed the sky. Impacts destroyed structures. Explosions hurled steel and fire everywhere. But there was a problem. Without maneuverability, German aim was hampered. Meanwhile, the British adjusted their shots with increasing precision. Salvage after salvo, impact after impact. The Bismarck began to be dismantled. As the minutes passed, the German battleship ceased to be a weapon and became a target. Its main guns were silenced, turrets destroyed, systems out of control. Fires consumed the deck. Men fought, no longer for victory, but for survival. HMS Rodney approached dangerously, firing at point-blank range, something extremely rare in naval warfare. It was an execution, even under total destruction. The Bismarck still floated. Then came the final decision. German officers ordered to sink their own ship. Explosive charges were prepared. Valves opened. The objective was clear: to prevent the ship from being captured. The pride of Germany would not be an enemy trophy. At 10:39 a.m., the inevitable happened. The Bismarck began to list. Slowly, inevitably, until it disappeared beneath the waters of the Atlantic. The ocean swallowed the giant, carrying over 2,000 men. In the icy waters, survivors fought against the cold. Cries for help echoed. Some were rescued by British ships, but the operation was interrupted. A German submarine alert had been detected. The British had to leave, leaving hundreds behind. the ocean fell silent again. The destruction of the Bismarck had an immediate impact. The Kriegsmarine changed its strategy. Large battleships were no longer viable. The war in the Atlantic would now be dominated by U-boats, invisible submarines, deadly, and much more difficult to stop. Even decades later, the name Bismarck still echoes, not just as a ship, but as a symbol of absolute power, of national pride, and of how critical decisions can change the fate of thousands. Its journey lasted only 8 days, but it went down in history as one of the most intense naval pursuits ever recorded. In the end, the Bismarck was not defeated by cannons alone, but by a combination of factors: luck, mistakes, and relentless determination. Because in war, even giants can fall.